If you're a woman over 50 or approaching 50 and struggling with hair loss, I'm going to share with you my 10-year history of maintaining my hair. We're going to cover lasers, we're going to cover topicals, we're going to cover in-office procedures, we're going to cover microneedling. So grab a pen and let's talk hair loss. I just wanted to reach out and empathize with those of you who are struggling with thinning hair or hair loss. It's such an emotional journey, especially when you're first starting out. It's scary. It really can impact your mental health. And I just wanted to reach out and tell you it's going to be okay. There are solutions. I hope my video helps you. I have lots of information for you and references for you. So let's get started. Initially, when you're experiencing hair loss, the best thing to do is to go see a licensed medical professional. The reason I recommend you seek out a medical professional when you first notice significant hair loss is there are lots of reasons you could be losing your hair. If you get a diagnosis, they'll do a full medical history and find out the root cause, or else you could be going down a path and trying solutions that really aren't getting at the cause of your hair loss. So that's what I did. I went and sought out a consultation from a specialist, a hair loss specialist. Once you have that diagnosis, you can feel so much more confident in their steps forward. I know that's how I felt. So I was diagnosed with telogen effluvium, which is sort of all over hair loss, even though I had a genetic predisposition to androgenic alopecia. And I went in thinking that's what I had. So it was really helpful for me to have that diagnosis and also some solutions in hand. So I had several recommendations after I had my appointment. And the first one was to start a 5% Minoxidil topical solution. The second one was to do some low-level light laser therapy. And so I purchased a laser cap back in the day. That was like 10 years ago. So I have one of the originals. Also stress reduction techniques and a vitamin B12 shot. So I'm going to go through each of these recommendations that I was given and also introduce you to other solutions that I've learned about along the way. So first of all, I started out with topical minoxidil. Now I prefer the Rogaine foam. I have a technique of how I put it into my hair so it doesn't get sticky. I can use it twice a day and with no problem. I actually use it as a styling product and I've never had any problem with it except when I was using the solution, which was slightly irritating to my scalp. So I switched over to the Rogaine foam, 5%. Now you can get this over the counter and it's easily accessible. I usually order it online. So what I do is I use this morning and night. The deal with this is once you start this therapy, you have to keep it up because the hair goes through cycles. And what we're trying to do is to stimulate hair growth. It kind of jump starts everything out of the telogen into the anagen phase. So you might experience a little bit of hair loss when you first start either this or any other hair loss therapy. So like I said, step one for me was starting on a Rogaine schedule, and I've used this for the last 10 years, no problem. I know other people that prefer not to use Rogaine. It kind of has some irritation, or it's just not for them, or it just doesn't work. But like I said, I've been using this for 10 years for twice a day, and it is a huge commitment. Now, have I been 1,000% adherent for the last 10 years? No, there are times when I've kind of slacked off, but I notice it and I realize I have to jump right back onto this. The second thing that that was recommended for me is low-level light therapy. Now, that's a type of laser, and this is different from LED, light emitting diodes. The laser therapy is more powerful and it's a more focused laser. With LED, it's a more broad spectrum wavelength and it's not as high energy and not as focused. So there is a little bit of a difference between the LED therapy and the low-level light therapy lasers. Now I have one of the original, it's like the laser cap that just sits inside a regular baseball cap. It has, I have the HD Plus, so it has a lot more diodes than some of the cheaper versions. And like I said, this is not a cheap investment, but I've used it for the last 10 years. I did get it replaced once. It comes with a charger and you just wear it around the house for 30 minutes every other day. And again, have I been adherent 1,000% for the last 10 years? No, I've slacked off sometimes, but in the times that I have slacked off, I've noticed that my hair starts to thinning again. So like I said, I've been pretty diligent about using this and I've been able to maintain my hair density and hair growth. And so what the low-level light therapy does is it again moves your hair into the anagen phase or the growth phase of the hair cycle. There are all kinds of laser caps out there these days, so I'm going to link a reference down below, and it's a great little table. It's one of the best references I've found that compares each one of the caps that are out there. It was recently done by a company that does comparison of all types of sort of beauty and health products. Can't remember their name at the moment, but I definitely will link it down below. And like I said, they do a side-by-side comparison of like the number of diodes, how powerful it is, the cost, and everything. So like I said, I'll link that down below if you're curious about low-level light therapy. And again, that's quite different from an LED. So make sure you do your research and distinguish which is going to be best for you. There's not a lot of research that LED therapy really works for hair loss because it doesn't necessarily target the right wavelength. They used to have some, in the past, they've had some studies out that a higher level wavelength, kind of in the 800 nanometers, was actually better. But now they've gone back to realizing within more recent studies that a wavelength between 600 and 900 nanometers is best, and actually for hair growth, between 630 and 660 nanometers is best. So I'll also link that study down below because it's more of a review of many different studies, which is always kind of a higher level of evidence than just a single study. And I'll link that paper down below as well if you want to do some more research on your own. Okay, so getting back to the reasons why you might be losing your hair. Again, it could be stress. It could be just hormones. It could be a vitamin deficiency. It could be medications, and it just could be a genetic issue. So like I said, it's really important to get the reason why you're having your hair loss before you start down the rabbit hole of all the solutions that are out there. The next step I took in addressing my hair loss, aside from the Minoxidil and the low-level light laser therapy cap, was to address a vitamin deficiency. For me, it was a B12 shot. All my other sort of supplements were in good check, no need to make any other changes, but I did have a vitamin B12 shot, and that was really helpful. And it also helped my energy level. And stress reduction, that is huge, huge, huge in hair loss. I was under a ton of stress and I hadn't really learned a lot of coping skills for stress reduction. So for me, at that time in my life, I started swimming. It was so much fun. Learning how to reduce my stress was really important. And that's been a lifelong struggle for me over the last 10 years. Right now, I'm doing yoga. I like to take walks. And I've also learned deep breathing, the breathe, hold, relax method. So if you haven't tried those different methods, the breathe, hold, relax is fantastic. That's one I use a lot lately. When you're really busy, that's a good one because you can do it at any time. Even if you're on a Zoom call, you can do it. That is just a wonderful way to get a quick release of tension in your body. And I highly recommend, if you haven't tried the breathe, hold, relax method, that you give that a try, or any kind of breath work for stress reduction. It's absolutely wonderful. And yoga is something I've recently introduced into my lifestyle, and that has been amazing. It's something that's been on my back burner for wanting to try for a long time. And I'm so glad I jumped into yoga. Now, I don't do much swimming lately, but I'd like to get back into swimming too. So those are the steps that I took for stress reduction. Now, the fourth kind of tier to my whole issue was perimenopause. But back then, about 10 years ago, the WHI study was just out, and doctors were kind of really stepping back from any kind of an HRT therapy and very fearful of giving women HRT therapy. But in the last 10 years, that's definitely changed, and I am now on HRT, which is kind of a whole nother video, but I will link the National Menopause Society if you're looking for a doctor that specializes in HRT therapy, or if you're interested in it. I'll link that down below. You can find a doctor in your area, because that's a whole nother area that women over 50, we need to address. And like I said, the WHI study didn't necessarily do us justice for helping us resolve all our perimenopause and menopause hormone issues. So I've since, like I said, gotten on some HRT therapy, which I also think is really helpful. So let's jump into other solutions for hair loss that I've looked into and I've studied, and I'll put links down below. But let's start out with dermaneedling. Now, we have heard a lot about medical microneedling for our faces and kind of stimulating collagen production, but medical microneedling and cosmetic microneedling are now being introduced for hair loss. I originally started using a little stamp along with my Minoxidil and just along my part line I'd part my hair and just stamp after I used my Minoxidil. And then I would let it dry down and use my laser cap. I introduced the stamping it was well into my hair loss journey, but I think it was about 2019. I'd heard about stamping along with, or microneedling along with Minoxidil. And I tried that out and I didn't notice a ton of change, I have to be honest. But since then, I also have gotten a cosmetic roller. So you can either stamp, you can roll, or you can use a microneedling pen. Now, I don't recommend the pen. I think the accuracy with that is a little bit questionable. And also those pens, you can get sort of more into medical microneedling where the depth might be too deep and you don't want to run into any scalp issues. But I have heard a lot of wonderful things about using a roller or a stamp along with Minoxidil. Now, I'm going to give you my experience in the last month. I did some stamping for a while, didn't notice a huge difference, and kind of backed off. Honestly, I don't think I did it for the 90 days that you should do it. But I've recently started doing it again and trying with my roller. And the roller seemed to work really well. If you have long hair, make sure you roll in one direction only, or it can get tangled with the roller. You might want to consider a stamp or even a pen, as long as like the depth of those needles of the pen are only at a cosmetic depth, because you don't want to go too deep in the dermis and cause some sort of like infection or irritation of the scalp and cause more problems than you've got already with your hair loss. So like I said, I started microneedling my scalp last month and I noticed a significant amount of hair loss. So I backed off. I was a little nervous. And even though I know that once you introduce a new therapy, sometimes it can kind of jumpstart that, you'll lose more hair and then things kind of pick up if you stick with it. So if you notice your medical microneedling or your microneedling cosmetic with a roller or a stamp and you have a little bit of increased hair loss, I think that's probably normal. So I wanted to give it kind of a month of a rest before I start up again. But I've been looking online and talking to so many people and also reading Dr. Setterfield's book about cosmetic microneedling for the scalp for hair loss, and it seems to be in concert with other therapies quite helpful. The other thing that I've recently introduced into my routine, aside from retrying the microneedling, is a scalp serum. This is the one by Haielle. It has apple stem cells, it has peptides, and it has red clover. The apple stem cells, or the Malus domestica extract, is supposed to help the duration of the hair follicle and keep it in that growth phase, as well as stimulating those dormant follicles. And the research, there's small studies on it, like most, ingredients for skin and hair and nails. The studies are fairly small, but somewhat significant, and the apple stem cells have been around for a while. It's a particular type of apple that's grown in Switzerland. And so be that as it may, this is a really one of the few serums that I've found that's kind of really soothing to the scalp. And like I said, it requires kind of a holistic approach. And this doesn't cause any irritation, whereas the Minoxidil might cause you some irritation. So this could be a nice alternative or adjunct to what you're already doing. So like I said, it has the peptides, which are cell communicating and help cell turnover and also hydrating to the scalp. It also has red clover at about 5%, which red clover is, the studies say that it helps increase gene expression, improve volume and density of hair thickness. So I haven't noticed like a massive change in my hair density and volume with this, but I feel like it's just kind of part of an overall, healthy hair routine, and I've actually been really enjoying it. The smell is really light, and it's just, I don't know, it feels soothing to my scalp. So I've really been enjoying this particular scalp complex. Another botanical extract that's really popular for hair growth is rosemary extract. I don't have any experience using it, and I know you have to be quite careful with it because it can be kind of irritating. You either need another carrier oil, or you need to put a few drops into a shampoo or a conditioner. So do be careful if you decide to use that. I don't have any experience with it. The other thing you can do are in-office procedures. Platelet-rich plasma is an in-office procedure. It usually takes like 3 to 4 treatments. And what they do is they take your own blood and they use the plasma, which is rich in growth factors, and they inject that back into your scalp. And that theoretically and through the studies that have shown is really helpful to help stimulate hair growth if you've had some significant hair loss. In addition to that, they also can add in microneedling with PRP or platelet-rich plasma injection. The last thing I want to do is kind of go through my daily routine really quickly on how I incorporate all the different hair loss techniques that I've used. So like I said, I'm kind of taking a break from the microneedling right now, but typically I use the low-level laser light therapy every other day for about 30 minutes. And I usually do that after I wash my hair and it's dried down. They don't recommend you use it right after you've used your minoxidil while your hair is wet. That can be really irritating because the cap can kind of warm up and it just causes extra irritation. And we know irritation is not healthy at all for our skin nor our scalp. So definitely make sure if you use a low-level laser light therapy that your topical that you've used has dried down and there's no irritation with combining the two. So with minoxidil, you have to use it twice a day. You have to be consistent. If you stop, your hair starts to kind of go back to its natural pattern. And that's what I've experienced. When I stop, it definitely sort of thins out again. So I use it morning and night, and I just use the applicator directly to my scalp and go through my part lines. And at night, obviously, I just let it dry down and then go to bed. And in the morning, I just put it on kind of on the early side and I let it dry down. And then I just go on with my normal styling. Or if I'm shampooing that morning, I do it at the last step after my shampoo or after a leave-in conditioner. So that's kind of how I use the foam. And like I said, I prefer the foam. It's less irritating and I just find it super easy to use. Follow all the directions for both of these products if you end up trying them. The bottom line is hair loss is usually multifactorial and requires a holistic approach. Typically, one particular therapy or one particular modality is not going to work. You have to kind of attack it in multiple ways. And my routine has changed over time. The two things that haven't really changed are the low-level laser light therapy cap that I use and the minoxidil. Those have kind of been a staple in my routine fairly consistently for the last 10 years and have held kind of my hair loss in good stead. And I haven't had major hair loss kind of since that time. I've had a couple bouts, like as the season changes, your hair kind of goes through the natural cycle of shedding and regrowing. So that, of course, has happened. And I have had several bouts of sort of more hair loss than another, but haven't really had the major shed that I had during my mid-40s. Thanks for joining me for today's video. If you're struggling with hair loss, I really empathize with what you're going through. I hope my 10-year journey and the steps that I've taken along the way and some tips that I provided in this video are helpful to you. If you'd like a get ready with me style video where I show you kind of my morning and my evening routine, kind of step by step, let me know and I can put that together. I'll probably do it closer to the fall because I'm considering doing some PRP therapy and I wanted to kind of share that with you. So let me know down below if an additional video about hair loss would be helpful. Thanks very much for joining me today and wishing you a skintastic day.